Welcome into a July 11, 2023 edition of the Crosstown Baseball Show. We're in the middle of All-Star Weekend. As we speak, the All-Star Game has just started. We're recording here a little after 7 p.m. Central Time, and all of the respective representatives from teams are in Seattle playing an All-Star Game right now. And of course, here today, we're not going to talk about All-Star Game festivities. We're going to talk about the draft that happened through All-Star Week a couple days ago. And then we're going to talk about kind of getting to the nitty-gritty of what's happening after the All-Star break, which is really all we care about at this point. And I couldn't think of anyone to talk about it more than my friend, the other Anthony Romanelli. Romanelli, how are you doing?
Doing all right. How are you?
I am good. I don't know about you. I watched the home run derby yesterday, obviously, because Luis Robert Jr. participated.
Yeah.
I was surprised at him beating Ashley Rutschman after Rutschman came out and just was cranking bombs, but ended up beating Adley Rutschman, getting to the semifinals and losing to Arozarena. Not complaining about that. Just to have someone in the home run derby finally representing the Sox is a big deal, I think.
I think so too. I did hear that he did something to his calf, though.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm like,
So
that just seems that seems very Sox this year and last year. Like
that's
seriously, like,
exactly right. That's exactly right. It's funny.
that,
It's funny you say
that's
that because
right.
I read the post. I read the post that said like Luis Robert yesterday, during the home run derby, and I was like, is this a joke? Like, is this like an All-Star game prank? And I was like, no, it's not. Why would it be? Because that's like totally a Sox thing that would happen.
It absolutely is, and it's only the Sox. That would only happen to the Sox. I don't even think that would happen to the Cubs. I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, no, just only the Sox. You get injured in a game that or in a home run derby. Like, just how stupid.
So he did experience the tight calf yesterday after the first round of the Derby. So of course that means his day to day will not be participating in the game tonight. And of course they'll reevaluate him on Friday when the Sox open the second half in Atlanta. But what I wanted to do before we talk about the second half, Romanelli, is talk about the draft. The MLB draft happened on Sunday. 20 rounds the draft is now, and of course the Cubs and the Sox had their respective picks, with each team selecting about 20 players. In the first round, we kind of went over last week that the the Cubs had if I can find it.
Matthew.
Well, pick number. So they had pick number 13 in
Oh,
the first
13.
round.
13.
And
Yep.
then, the Sox had 15. So I want to talk about those first round picks for a second, because those are the picks that generally we all associate with being kind of the blue chip prospects, the guys you really want to pay attention to that could move up in the farm system quickly. So tell us a little bit about kind of your perceptions of what the Cubs did with their first round pick this year.
Matthew Shaw out of Maryland. He's got quite the bat, so he might be a fantastic addition to the team. The one question mark I have as I watched the draft is Matt Shaw is a shortstop. And last I checked, they signed Dansby Swanson for 7 years. So if you're picking a shortstop, and actually they picked multiple shortstops throughout the draft, if you're picking a shortstop, what does that say to Swanson? Now, obviously, he's young and they're going to develop him over time. And my guess is as Swanson goes out, Shaw comes in. That's my guess. Does Swanson last all 7 years? We know that in the past, as players, not only as they age, but as they get nearer the end of their contract, they never end up fulfilling it with the team that they signed for that length. So if Shaw ends up working out in 4 or 5 years, obviously we'll be okay with that. So it was a solid pick. I do agree, but I was like, he's a shortstop. That was my own. And again, I am definitely, and I know I'm probably overthinking it because Swanson still got some time left. Well, Jesus, 6 years left. And so, and this kid is so young that he probably won't be coming up for however, a solid 4 years maybe. So it's probably a smart pick, to be honest. But I just had questions about it for that very reason.
Yeah,
You need a center fielder. Sorry, you need a center fielder. You need a catcher. And again, they're not going to throw an 18-year-old behind the plate. They're not going to do that to a center fielder either. You've got Crow Armstrong, who's on his way up. So we'll see. We'll see. I was happy with the pick, but still questions it a little.
Well, all good questions. I mean, the way that these drafts work, it's interesting because you're picking really from. I mean, there's variables in what I'm about to say, but it generally is always: are you going to pick someone? Are you going to pick a prep guy that's going to be either a prep pitcher or a prep, high school, player? Or are you going to pick someone who is finishing up their college career? And in this case, they did go with the college bat in Matt Shaw, who is 21, so he's a little older guy. So
Yep.
he's someone that could, like you said, if he's getting to the majors in 3 and 4 years, I mean, he's going to be 25, 24, 25. And now we know a lot of these guys get to the majors much earlier than 24 or 25. And so the natural question becomes what you're asking is, well, what do you do if he's really hitting his way, fielding his way through the minors, and he's coming up at age 23, 24? What happens with Dansby Swanson? And I kind of had the same question. And as I was reading the scouting reports for Matt Shaw, one thing stood out to me consistently is that there's a consensus that he is going to be one of the better college hitters that they drafted out of the draft, which is great. He rarely strikes out, draws walks. That's fantastic. Everything that a team needs. But defensively, while he's great defensively, his arm is weaker when it comes
Right.
to a lot of the shortstops in the draft. And so the anticipation is that he will eventually move to second base. And if that is what happens, well, then, I mean, obviously you have Nico Horner, but that provides some flexibility to put maybe Nico in an outfield spot. You have a third base hole in a couple of years, whether or not they fill it up in the air. So I think there is some flexibility with this guy potentially when he gets up to the majors.
I would agree with you. Again, there is that hole at third, and maybe they move Nico over. There was talk that Nico was an overlooked potential all-star. I've said it from the beginning that he is an all-star as far as I'm concerned.
Sure.
And so we'll see how they develop players. I'll be very curious as we get to that discussion later in the podcast. What the rest of the year holds and how they potentially look at players in different positions. So we'll see.
Absolutely. We will see. But overall, I think solid pick. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of these teams, and I think we'll see this with the Sox too, is when you're getting in the first round in the draft, I think teams you'll see have a strategy for where they want to focus throughout all the 20 rounds of the draft. But when it comes to this first round and oftentimes the second as well, it's best player available. And so if they have Dansby Swanson for 7 years and Matt Shaw was the best player on their board when they came up and picked, that's going to be the pick. And I think both the Cubs and the Sox did that this year. And the Cubs certainly did that with Shaw. So the second pick. So I'm not sure how much you got into this guy, Romanelli, but their second pick was in the second round, or excuse me, it was in the second round. It was a compensatory pick at pick 68. Tell us a little bit about this second pick from your perspective.
Jackson Wiggins.
Wiggins.
Go ahead.
No, I just love the name. What a name, Jackson Wiggins. Like
Jackson Wiggins.
Crazy.
It is crazy. So I'm hopeful that from a scouting report perspective, that they're spot on with him. He's a big kid. He's like 6'6", 220, 225. Yeah. So hopefully that between the size and what they talk about regarding his control, I'm hoping that he comes around because his sophomore year he did okay. He was 6-3, but his ERA was through the roof. Here's what I don't understand. This year, he didn't appear in a single game due to injury.
Yeah.
So he hasn't pitched since 2022. We don't know the extent of his injury. So why are you picking a pitcher who hasn't pitched in a solid year, right? His ERA is over 6, even though he went 6-3. but he still allowed over 50 runs in 60 innings. So
Mm.
I don't know from a strength perspective what they were thinking. He That to me doesn't shore up anything. Okay, so if I look at my first two picks, I have a shortstop for 7 years. I have a guy this year who's injured, who hasn't thrown a single pitch. So you're not shoring up your bullpen. You're not looking to add. I don't get it. And if this is Jed, now Jed's your GMs, he's there. He knows more than you and I do. We know this.
Hmm.
However, that doesn't look good on paper.
It doesn't. And we'll talk
Well,
about Tommy John's surgery again because the Sox also pulled this card
yeah,
in their second round, and we'll get to that. But the this is I'm with you. I struggle, and I don't know enough about the medical side of a Tommy John. I think you and I are used to, for the last 10, 15 years, anytime you heard of a guy getting Tommy John, it was like pitcher cancer. You're like, oh, that's the kiss of
right.
death. At that point, who knows if this guy's ever going to pitch again? If he does, it's not going to be well. I I think that's changing though. I don't know if it's about the surgery. I don't know if it's about the rehabilitation, how that's gotten better. But you have guys that have gone under the knife and got Tommy John twice and come back and pitch. I mean, maybe not at an all-star level, Hall of Fame level. It's still they pitch average. They pitch all right. Some more than all right. So, I, having said that, though, like it is a big question mark. It is a big risk. I think one of the things that probably made Jackson Wiggins stand out to the Cubs was he's at the college level already pitching. His fastball's already up to 97, and all of his secondary pitches. I mean, one of the things that you look at when you're a pitcher at any level, at any point, even if you're developing major leaguer, is if you have a fastball that sits at 95, 97, you really want your secondary pitches to be kind of low to mid 80s for a higher variance in speed or higher variance in velocity. So he is his pitches, his secondary pitches are in those mid 80s, and you got a curveball that gets in the 70s. So that's a
Yeah.
great variance of velocity. And I think they look at that and go, if he's healthy and he can maintain that fastball and those secondary pitches at that velocity, he has some potential there.
He does. I will say one thing, well, maybe two things. But the first thing I'm going to say is one of the tiniest words in the world. And it's two letters long, and you said it, and people don't give it enough credit. And it's if. If. Okay. In the 2 years that he pitched, this freshman sophomore year, his ERA was 6. He averaged a 6.0 ERA in 2 years. That to me, and I know the Cubs pitching coach at the major league level is phenomenal. He's a great pitching coach. The guys love him. The locker room loves him. Everybody knows who he is across the league because he does
Mhm.
such a solid job. However, you better 2 years with an ERA of 6 or higher. It averages 6 in his freshman sophomore year. Okay,
Right.
and Tommy John surgery. To me, here was my thought. Fine as a pick. As a second pick, no. Sorry.
That's fair.
That's too much. I don't want to say baggage, but that's too much if for me. That's too much if.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you 100%. I'm with you 100%. And the if thing is the whole MLB draft in a nutshell. It's how drafts are with
That's
any
true.
sport, right? I mean, you can,
Yeah.
and that's what I love about the draft in a way, because you look at these players through this draft, and you could have that first or second pick be an absolute rock star that you think they are because you've done your research and you look into it and you spend time on these guys, or it could be an absolute bust, which happens. I will say this: it goes the other way too, right? I mean, you look at the 2011 draft, all right, and you look at who the Red Sox picked in the 5th round of that 2011 draft. Mookie Betts. Okay,
Yep.
so it does happen. So
Oh,
we
I
it,
mean,
it it's just so the variance is just crazy. You never
I
know.
mean, yeah, and I only know. I apologize for the side note, but like Tom Brady was a 6th round draft pick.
Bingo.
Like, come on, nobody expected that. So
No, no.
obviously, all of this is predicated on what we believe and what we see based on recent past, but we have no clue. It's this is fun to do, but man, it scares me. I don't think that he's a second round pick to me. He's just not.
Yeah, yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, kind of how he recovers from Tommy John. And certainly remember too, folks, that all these players that either team any team signs, they haven't necessarily signed with the teams yet, right? I mean,
Correct.
they still negotiate their signing bonus, their contract. So that's all up in the air. But I mean, you can assume that the vast majority of these folks are going to be signing with these teams.
Yeah.
So that's the Cubs. We have Matt Shaw in the first round, Jackson Wiggins in the second round, and of course, if you want to see the rest of the picks, there's a variety of folks. They have a couple handfuls of pitchers, couple outfielders, a first baseman, couple infielders. So definitely go to MLB.com and check out that list for the Cubs and see all their drafts from Sunday and Monday, all their draft picks. But the Sox, they picked a couple picks after the Cubs, picked 15. And with their first pick, they picked Jacob Gonzalez out of Ole Miss. He is a shortstop.
Yep.
He is a 4-year junior. He's also kind of a moderately bigger guy, 6'2", but only 200 pounds at 6'2". Jacob Gonzalez he's excellent back to ball skills. Let me just start there. So excellent bat to ball skills. He
Yeah.
has great control of the strike zone, and with his strength, bat speed. I mean, his left-handedness is going to. I think everybody knows how hard it is to find a solid left-handed batter or left-handed
Uh-huh.
hitter, and Jacob Gonzalez at the shortstop position could be that type of guy. Comparables, think of like Corey Seager. Okay, so
Yeah.
if Jacob Gonzalez actually reaches the potential that they believe he will reach, we're looking at a Corey Seager type of player, which I would welcome in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he like top 20 in MLB in MLB's like up and coming? I want to say he was. I'm not
He
100% sure, but I thought he
Let
was.
me check. Yes, so he was. So he was ranked
And
18th
he was
on the
local.
list. Yeah.
18.
Well, he was 18th. Yeah, ranked 18th on MLB's top 100. So that speaks volumes of kind of what they're getting out of this guy. But this presents. It's funny that you bring up the whole shortstop situation with the Cubs because it's similar, not the same, but
No, look.
similar with the White Sox because if you'll remember 2 years ago, the Sox drafted Colson Montgomery, shortstop, that
Yep.
also has comparables to Corey Seager, left-handed bat, tall, built shortstop guy. This is another situation with Jacob Gonzalez where, similar to Matt Shaw, he could see himself more in the near term moving to second base or third base. So in both Shaw and Gonzalez, I think our teams have guys that are flexible and adaptable and could very well see themselves off of shortstop for either one of these teams. So
Yeah. No, I completely agree, and I think he's got a higher ceiling. Uh, he's got more potential with a solid future with the White Sox, whereas the Cubs, you've got a solidified duo up the middle. So Anderson, as we have talked, has not been the Tim Anderson we have hoped for. We know the Sox are cleaning house. We know it. Again, this kid's not coming up tomorrow, but the White
right.
Sox the White Sox are cleaning house. So that kid may come up significantly sooner than the kid for the Cubs. So I'm excited to see the changes for the White Sox. To be honest with you, even though it's only July 11th, I'm excited to see what changes because we know it's coming. The White Sox, it's coming, and
Well,
I think it's going to be dangerous weather changing. Like it's coming.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts, so we'll get there. The interesting thing with the Sox second pick is the Sox second pick. They picked 51 overall. They picked Grant Taylor from LSU. He is a right-handed pitcher, 6'3", 230 pounds. Grant Taylor is, interestingly enough, spent a lot of time coming out of the bullpen more recently. He kind of tops out with a 93, 95 mile an hour fastball, which he can reach 99 on that, as the scouting report says. But he is also someone that injured his elbow in an inter-squad game here back in February, required Tommy John, so he's out the rest of 2023. Other scenario. So, and what I struggle with, and I honestly haven't read enough about Grant Taylor to say this definitively, but everything I'm seeing that he has been someone who has been pitching out of the bullpen. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't love spending the first couple rounds of picks on bullpen arms. Don't love that.
Completely agree. The Tommy John comment made me think. I think from now on, if you're going to have the potential to pitch in the major leagues, you should just ask for Tommy John surgery for like a Christmas present at 19 years old. Just get it out of the way so then you can get drafted. I get it, Mom. Instead of LASIK, you get a little Tommy John at 19. It's healed by 20, and next thing you know, you're 22 and a phenom.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if your kid's in T-ball and they're gonna be playing baseball all through their childhood, don't even open a 529 for your kid. Open up a Tommy John fund, you'll be fine.
Yep, I love it.
Tax deductible, folks. Tax
That's
deductible.
True.
The Tommy John fund.
Tommy John fund. That's great. That's great.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's the draft in a nutshell. I mean, we're not going to go through every other pick. Both teams got approximately 20 picks, so feel free to check out the entirety of the Cubs and the White Sox drafts. But we wanted to at least cover the first two rounds of picks, because those are the folks you're probably going to hear of often that are probably already on top of our within both the Cubs and the Sox top 30 prospects, with those rankings already have came out with this draft. So I want to transition and spend the rest of the time together talking about, now that we're through the draft, the home run derby, the All-Star games wrapping up tonight as we speak. Very quickly, this All-Star break will be coming to an end, and then we will continue to watch shitty baseball. So Friday, the second half officially begins, and we are in crunch time here, because Friday the 14th through August 1st is really that time where we start to see moves made as we get closer to the trade deadline. And so what I wanted to talk about is a couple things. One, who's staying and who's going on the Cubs and the Sox, and we'll talk about some of our predictions there. And two, talk about what do these things team need to do? What do these teams need to do? I can't talk. What do these teams need to do going into the second half? What is the expectation, and what is the rest of the season mean to you, really? And I want to start with the Cubs, because the Cubs and the Sox have similar similar records. I think we both agree they're playing pretty piss poor, one more piss poor than the other. But let's start with, what do you make of what the Cubs need to do at this trade deadline before we talk about kind of specific players?
Find a third baseman and find a first baseman. That's what they need to do. That hasn't changed in months since we've talked about this last. What do they need to do? They need a third baseman. They need a first baseman. They need a catcher. I don't know off the top of my head where their pitching is, but it seems to be standing up okay. I still believe you have the best 1, 2, 3 in baseball in your guy, my guy, and Hendricks. I do. I believe Hendricks and Steele and Stroman are, I almost said Strope for a second, are your top 3 in baseball. So that being said, they need corner infielders. That's what they need. Corner infielders that can hit. No one is there. Wisdom's not there. They tried Morel there, and I talked about that already. He reminds me of a Ramos Ramirez. They put him there. Didn't do great, but in one game, whatever, couple of games. It's early for him being there. But they need a first baseman and a third baseman. Every team can always use more pitching. But that's what I think they need right now. And And again, Suzuki still is a bust to me.
Okay, so a couple things there is I certainly agree with you. First baseman and third baseman are on the shopping list, but before we even get to specific players, that is true what you're saying. But I struggle to understand, and we talked about this a little bit last week, what the plan is because I see them in a position where they're not pushing the envelope, they're not tearing it down. They're in this in between space where if they get an offer for a Stroman, if they get an offer for a Bellinger, I think they're gone. I really and then I start to wonder what that long term plan is, and it bugs me that I don't know.
Okay, so perfect. I didn't know if we were going to bring up names yet. Yeah, I would believe that Bellinger is as good as gone. Um,
Yeah,
which which I completely understand. He has done a more than formidable job. He's, I think, reinvented himself and or refound himself, not reinvented, but he's found
yeah.
himself again. Um, and he will get paid, and he'll go to a winning franchise. He will. Maybe he ends up back with the Dodgers. Who knows? Um, but he'll be gone for sure. There's no doubt in my mind. To get rid of Stroman, that's going to have to be a haul, and the only way that they get rid of him now, he's probably your most valuable piece, right? So then they're
But
tearing it, but they're tearing it down. Then they're going to have to tear it down. But then you get rid of everybody. You may as well. And
this is
then
what I don't get. This is where I get frustrated. I don't mean to cut you off, and I want to talk about
no, you're good.
Stroman before you
No, no, you're
before you
good.
leave the point. Is with the Stroman thing, I agree with you. It should be a haul, but if you uh, either shit or get off the pot, why aren't you signing Stroman if you feel that confidently that he is the guy and you want that return? What are you just not going to sign him in the hope that maybe you get a deal and keep the door open? Like, come on.
Um, it's an interesting thought because as the biggest chip, um, I don't even know who you're talking to get the biggest haul. Like what team in your mind? Who would you be talking to?
Well, I'll give you two right off the bat. One of them is not very likely, but it's just the state of things. Um, Padres,
Okay,
Dodgers. They're
okay.
Dodgers right now, they've had 15 injuries this year to their starting rotation. Otani. Yeah. Otani. Yeah, that's not going to trade for Otani with Stroman, but he's still a part of this conversation. Let's not forget. Let's
Yep.
keep that in the back of our minds, folks. But I think here's the deal. It, I'm going to bring this out a little bit, your question, and kind of talk about the broader theme here. And that's that if you're looking at the pitching market this trade deadline, it is a seller's market when it comes to starting pitching. There's not going to be many starters in the market. And remember, this year's deadline is going to be the first deadline in this new environment of there are 14 teams that can make the playoffs now, which means less teams are going to be wanting to giving away pitching. More teams are going to want to buy pitching, which means the sellers decrease, the market decreases, and it kind of collapses on itself. So if you're looking at starters available, we'll talk about some of the Sox starters that are available in a little bit. Marcus Stroman could be available. I mean, I can maybe on one hand count how many pitchers I know off the top of my head that are going to be available, and people are going to want to reinforce the rotation, so they may get the haul that they're looking for. Quite frankly,
They may. But then I would say this: if they get rid of Stroman, what does that say about them as a franchise? Clearly, they don't want to win. Clearly, they don't want to win. When Stroman, and again, I said this, I posted this on Facebook. Not that that means anything, but Jed was upset that Stroman went public. Well, you know what? And I've said this before as well. You made Chris Bryant cry. You had Contreras and Hap hug at the point in time they almost got traded because they were playing so piss poor because everything was in their heads. So you, Jed, don't have the best track record. So when Strope calls you out, you know what? You deserve that. You deserve to be called out because what you're doing then is telling the rest of the league, don't come here. Like everybody likes to play at Wrigley. Everybody wants to play at Wrigley. However, you have a GM who is more cutthroat than he needs to be, isn't looking at the bigger picture of either blowing it up and starting over, um, or are we a few pieces away? Because they're however many games out in an absolutely shitty division to where if they somehow crawl up and become a playoff team, they're going to get their tail handed to them. Um, at the same time, um, in the last 2 to 3 weeks, all of a sudden, David Ross has a fire in his ass, and he's gotten thrown out of 2 games, and he's told the media to f off, and
Mm-hmm.
there's 2 things going on, I think, in Ross's head. Either he knows this is it for him. Remember, I said he gets 2 years. I said this at the beginning. He's on a very short leash, and he is now done. I think, like, he's just like, you know what, fuck this. I'm putting everything out there. I'm done playing, and I posted this. Like, he's done being Mr. PC. He's done. He's like, he was dropping f bombs. And if you did you hear him go off, and they played the audio clip of the video clip of him, like, with the Yankees. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's only 1 game left before the break, and you're this shitty already. Like,
Right.
so, so he is. So he's finally coaching fearlessly, and you've never won in New York, and then you take 2 or 3 from the Yankees. So is that now the turning point? Now I'm going to say that to say this: the last time they were on a run, they went to London, and they came and lost and got swept because maybe it was the jet lag and being tired. Now they beat the Yankees 2 out of 3, and there's a break. So is that break then going to say, okay, they were too tired to keep going, blah, 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 whatever, however you want to package that mindset up. I believe Stroman made the right choice in resting. I'm proud of Steele for going. I think they both, did what they needed to or wanted to or whatever. I'm happy for that. I'm so curious what's going to happen the second half. The Cubs, I'm more curious about. Are they gonna, shit or get off the pot on the field? The White Sox are done. They've already shit, and they're just sitting on the pot, and no one knows why they haven't got off. It's just hard. It's hard to watch. It's hard to watch.
It is. It is. And I like to frame it this way because I think one, this is just the reality, and I think we both. I guess I'll just speak for myself. I get trapped in the old school thinking of you're either a buyer at the deadline and you're a seller at the deadline. And I think now more than ever, I don't know that it's always fair to put teams in only those 2 categories. I think now more than ever, you're seeing people that are kind of on a range or on a spectrum and maybe even in the middle because there are more chances to get in the playoffs. You see teams getting creative with their tweaks, getting creative with player development in ways where not everything needs to be a big buy, a big build like the Padres have done recently or the Dodgers. Not everything needs to be a tear down like these teams think the magic formula has been. The Astros, the Cubs, the White Sox, everyone who did these huge tear it down to the studs rebuilds. I think those days are probably long gone for a lot of teams. And so I do think we have to look at it from a new lens of what are these teams doing on the margins, but also here and there in their rosters to really supplement what you would consider as their traditional core to stay competitive every year. And so I, I look at both the Cubs and the Sox as maybe both being in that same space, and we could agree with it or disagree with it, but all the signs have kind of pointed to them being in that similar in between space where I don't know that Jed Hoyer is going to trade all of his prospects, but I don't know that he's going to go out and buy a couple 200 million plus free agents. it's going to be, oh, can I add this guy here and piece and fill that hole with someone who can hit the ball and play average defense? Can I get a pitcher who I know I can get 200 innings on in my rotation, and maybe he can have a sub 4 ERA? It's a strategy that is kind of meeting the moment, and it's a strategy that is data driven to see how many runs you can get out of your guys. I think that's the environment that we're in right now.
I would completely agree. I would say that you hit the nail on the head when you talked about a guy giving you his best for a short period of time in Tyon, James Tyon. That's what I think they got him for. And
Mhm.
he has bombed. Well, to this point, he bombed and then had that gem against his former team in the Yankees. But
Yeah.
to that point, he was a bust. So now let's see what happens with him when he comes back. So he's somebody who you swung and missed. Suzuki to me is still a swing and a miss. You brought over this guy from Japan who was the second coming, and he's barely hitting 250, not doing what he needs to. So that's a swing and a miss.
Mm.
So to me, there's too many. So needing first and third, not having four guys that you can count on. Again, we all know if you go deep in the playoffs, you can do it with three players or three pitchers. Uh,
Sure.
but but you had your expectations for Tyon were much higher. They just were. This big kid
Yeah.
who was not having a good year with the Yankees. So let's take a chance on him. People forget that Jake Arrieta was a chance. Nobody knew who
Oh,
Jake Arrieta was when they got him from the
yep.
Orioles. He didn't even look the same. He looked like a completely different human being.
Sure did.
So um, they're trying to your point, the Cubs were trying to fill holes, and Tyon was a swing and miss, and right now Suzuki's a swing and miss, and that doesn't bode well for them trying to fill holes the second half because that brings you back to your point. What the hell are they doing?
Right. Right.
Yeah,
And I'm looking at, obviously during this time I like to follow kind of what um kind of the sports beat journalists are hearing from the team. Obviously these guys have the inside scoop and we hear rumors from these folks. And so their ears to the ground. I haven't really heard anything about the Cubs other than them not inclined to sign Marcus Stroman to an extension. So they've been awfully quiet. So we're not really going off of anything. But I wanted to get your opinion of if it were up to you, which guys are you inclined to trade at this trade deadline?
that's a really good question. Like okay, let's play GM.
Yeah.
That's what we should do next year. Find a league where we're also a GM. Um,
Yeah.
you do. I know you can do that with football or soccer, where you're actually a GM or you're an owner.
Yeah.
Probably, probably Bellinger. He's gone. Um, I would. I don't like Suzuki. I just and I didn't.
You're really giving up on him.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I don't see. I don't see it. I don't see it. I think he's
Wow.
missed. Hmm. And did you have him as the home run leader, or did I? Yeah, you did. And I had Hap as the team's home run leader. Is
I
that right?
think you're right. I think you're right.
Yeah, and Hap doesn't. I don't even think Hap has 10. I think he's got 7 or 8. Suzuki, I don't think has 10 either. Um, and that to me is just a huge swing and miss. But uh,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I would say, but I don't know who would take Suzuki. Would you? So if I'm
I
offering him, do you take him? Because again, there's potential there. They know what he did, but right now he's not doing well here. However, he could do better somewhere else.
uh maybe. I think maybe I would. I mean, you also have to remember the position I'm in, right? So the position I'm in is I'll take, a stick with arms. So
Right, right.
so Suzuki sounds pretty good.
So
But
would you if you were a Yankee, would you take I would talk to the Yankees. That short porch in right field and Suzuki with that powerful swing, when he connects, he can connect and crush the ball. That's the only place, maybe Boston. And
I
those are the only two places I see him. And again, this is you and I. making up who might take him. To me, it's Bellinger, and then again about filling holes and building. We're not doing anything by getting rid of one guy.
I I s- I I'm sorry. I still think I would I w- I s- I think there's still hope for Suzuki. I do think the problem is with Suzuki. I still think he got too big. It changes the
Yes,
way you move your body. It changes the way you prepare for the game. It just changes you. And that's
I
not like a
agree.
wake up the next day and all of a sudden I can do all these things with my body when I'm adding 20 pounds of muscle. Like I think that's part of it.
I actually completely agree with you. I completely agree. It changed everything. He came back, swole as hell, and everybody was like, "Oh, look at him." And I think you're right. I think it messed with his body, and it unfortunately he doesn't have whatever. You built the muscle, but didn't train the body to swing properly with that change.
Right. Right. Um, okay, interesting. So I guess to sum up for the Cubs, we don't know what the hell they're doing. Stroman may be traded if the right deal. I still hold that he may be if the right deal comes along. Bellinger may very well be gone. Suzuki, we don't know what the hell's going on with Suzuki either. Great. I'm glad
So
we have a lot of answers.
and I'm sorry, I'll just ask. So if they get, and then we can go to the White Sox. If they get rid of Stroman and Bellinger, do you stay a Cubs fan? Because they're cleaning house, and you have nobody at first, you have nobody at third. You're getting rid of your number one pitcher, and the number
I'm
one, and he would have been the starter in the All Star game. He's not a borderline decent pitcher. He's your
eh,
number one stud in the entire National League.
you're right.
Do you stay a Cubs fan?
This this is going to be an existential crisis for a lot of people. I think you're onto something there because again, this is not the Oakland A's. This is
No.
not the Detroit Tigers. This is the Chicago goddamn Cubs. Like,
And
why could they put more money into this team?
when the Cubs and Marquee specifically, they're like their slogan, their tagline is "We get all of it." Do you? Do you really? What are you going to say? Let's say they get rid of Stroman in a week, or I'm sorry, at the end of the month. You get rid of Stroman. I challenge Marquee's marketing team. I freaking challenge them. We get all of it. Do you really? Because you know what? Come knocking on my door the minute they get rid of Stroman. Come knocking on super passionate fans. Come knocking on our doors and tell us that you get all of it, Marquee. And I know you're not in the war room making those decisions, but you get all of it. Let me see your commercial right after the trade deadline. That's what I
I'll,
want to see.
I'll tell you what the commercial is. The commercial is the light comes on a Cubs jersey, and on the back of the Cubs jersey, it says the name on the jersey is percentage of fans that are happy, and the number is Stroman 0. That
Right.
is what it is.
Yep. Yep. Because next starts here. Well, you pull that bullshit, and then next starts next year. I love
I,
that. That was
I
good.
I do think, in all seriousness, I do think they find themselves in a really tough spot where I think fans are going to start turning on this team if they don't provide a direction and don't put the resources into the team. And here's the deal. Here's the deal. The last 10 minutes we've just been talking about it's easy to get in the playoffs. This division sucks. We talked about it before. Like every single door is open. Every
Yep.
single door is open, and you're
And you
not
know
taking
what?
advantage of it.
And you know what's going to happen? I said whether I like him or not is doesn't matter, but Ross is going to be your fall guy. You
Yeah,
watch. You watch. And I think he's a decent manager. I really do. He gets the game. Jesus Christ. We know he gets
sure.
the game. He's won more than one World Series.
Absolutely.
On to the Sox.
Um, Oh, Jesus, where to start? Okay. So here's what I'm thinking with the Sox. I think this is not a shit or get off the pot situation. I think it is very clear that there is something fundamentally at the core wrong with this team. I don't think it's the Cubs are different. I think the Cubs have a group of good guys. I think they're missing some pieces. I think structurally, culturally, I think they have something. With the Sox,
I would
there is
agree.
something culturally, structurally wrong with the way this team has been put together. And quite frankly, I'm about ready to tear it up. And I don't think this is on Grifol. I don't think this is
No.
on the coaching staff. I think this is on players that we thought they were a certain way and they were not. What's that coach, that football coach? They're not what we thought they were. I just
Yeah.
reversed it because that's
Yep.
literally they're not. They are not what we thought they were in this
Yep.
case. And so there's been enough time, and I do think that this is going to be that moment for this franchise where all of these years of watching Yohan Moncada develop into hopefully an all-star, watching the development of Eloy Jimenez and all these guys, I think that ends now. I think time's up, and
Yep.
now that we know what these guys are going to be, um, but again, it comes back to the point that I made with the Cubs is the Sox are going to be in a position where I don't think they're going to full sail tear it down. I think they are going to be very selective on how they move, what they move on from, and try to fill particular holes because, again, the goal is to compete in 2024. I promise you, they're not going into 2024 kind of just waving the white flag. They won't. They will go into 24 wanting to compete. And they're going to be very purposeful about the players they move on from this summer and in the offseason to reinforce this team the best they can. Now, we have all offseason to talk about all the holes that will need to be filled, in which there will be a lot for this team. Now, when we talk about the trade deadline, here's where I see the Sox taking advantage of some things. I mentioned earlier the weak pitching market for this trade deadline. Very, very many writers have been very clear about that they're hearing that two guys are most likely gone. Lance Lynn and
Yep.
Lucas Giolito.
Yep.
Absolutely. Why would you not? And I love them both, but why would you not take advantage of the market and trade those guys and get a return? Because in a market like this, you can trade a guy like Giolito and Lynn and get a maybe a either one kind of 1 to 5 top prospect in a system and maybe 1 5 to 10 and then another guy. Like, I mean, you could absolutely get that return at a trade deadline for these pitchers. So I anticipate that they are going to wave the white flag on their pitching staff this year. They're going to bite the bullet for the next couple months, knowing they're going nowhere fast, and they're going to trade 20% of their pitching rotation.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, did they get rid of Dylan Cease?
No.
Then why should the Cubs get rid of Marcus Stroman?
Exactly. So, okay, so that's a great segue because one thing we did hear is John Heyman of the New York Post reported yesterday that the Sox are prepared to seriously consider all offers for
Yep.
everyone but 4 players. Okay.
Yep. I read
Dylan
this.
Cease,
Yep.
Luis Robert Jr., Andrew Vaughn, and Eloy Jimenez. I agree with all of those except for one. Which one do you think?
Jimenez.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Because I'm tired of him spending
Yep.
more time on the bench than he is in the field. And I'm done. I'm done. And also,
And
I think he's also just a child. He's a big baby.
he ends up being he's not a bargaining chip. He ends up as part of he's the low end of the package. And you get this and this and Jimenez. We don't want
And
him.
that's
You
just
don't have a choice.
that's just so unfortunate because I objectively he's talented. Objectively, if he was healthy, he can give you 40 bombs in a season.
Yeah.
But guess what? Actions speak louder than words, and
Right.
they speak louder than potential. I'm tired of hearing the word. I'm tired of hearing the word potential. I'm tired of hearing, oh, they have all this talent. No,
No,
we're
they
done.
don't.
You either do it or you don't.
Yeah, shit or get off the pot. That's really what
Yes.
we should change today's theme, or I'm sorry, title to, instead of the teams they are changing. Just shit or get off the pot.
Yeah. No
Just for
kidding.
today.
Also, little side note. I for what you said earlier, great obvious shirts idea. We can submit to them. You made Chris Bryant cry. That's it.
Yep. Yep. I love it. So one of the things I was going to talk to you off camera about was the like the way I want the other Anthony and Crosstown Baseball Show. All of that won't fit on a shirt.
Oh, yeah.
We'd have to talk to the people at Obvious Shirt just to help us figure something out.
Yeah, we
Um,
can get creative. We can get
yeah,
creative.
yeah. It's like we
Um,
didn't. Anyway, go ahead.
no, you're good. You're good. So, having said that, if I'm going into really making a list of guys that I think are going to be off this team come the trade deadline, I do think, and rightfully so, that the Sox are going to try to maximize this deadline as much as possible. So here's what I see happening. I think their pitching staff is going to be absolutely just
Yep,
ripped apart,
murdered.
and that
Yep,
includes Giolito and Lynn. But
yep.
remember that the Sox actually have a really solid bullpen. We're talking about guys like Joe Kelly, Kendall Graveman, Ronaldo Lopez. Teams need bullpen arms, and I
I
do
love
think
Joe Kelly.
those. Oh, no
I
one
just
does.
love. I know. I think he's so nuts that I love him.
Oh, okay, you like him because he's nuts, because he's a little nutty, and
Yeah,
he and his repertoire is great. His pitch selection. I mean, he's a great pitcher. He
yeah.
finesses the zone. But three of those pitchers in Lopez, Graveman, and Kelly, people are going to be calling for. So
Oh
I think
yeah.
two of those three are gone.
Hmm.
Um, on the position player side, I mean, this is where it gets a little dicey because you're not trading Robert Jr., you're not trading Andrew Vaughn, you're not trading Eloy Jimenez. I am so curious to see what happens to Tim Anderson. I don't know. I it, it- I don't even know what to say about it. Like I don't know if I want him gone or not. I haven't decided yet.
Oh, I do. Yeah, he's 2 years for conversational purposes. He's just a couple years older than Jimenez insofar as potential. There was so much potential for Tim Anderson, and he was the face of the franchise, and he was going to lead them to the promised land. And none of that, nothing happened. I'm done with him. I'm
Eh,
done.
So
The
if for the
injuries are still there, just enough to be annoying. Same with
right,
Jimenez. And again, we talked about this earlier in the year that unless things change, go. And nothing has changed with either one of them. Not enough to,
yeah,
you know what? Lead with Cease and let everybody follow Cease. You don't have the leader in Tim Anderson that you thought. After how many years? No, not anymore.
I do. I agree with all of that, and I do lean towards it. Times up for Anderson too. I do
Yep.
think in his case, I'm hearing a lot of chatter out there about oh well, you're going to sell him, you're trading him for pennies on the dollar. He's had a really shitty year. All that's true, and all that may be true. I tend to believe that teams, the big thing during the trade deadline is you want teams to be desperate. Okay. And there are teams out there that will absolutely take someone with a track record that Tim Anderson has. Now, granted,
Yes.
he has the injuries, he's had a shitty year, but he has a track record. Maybe he is just a change of scenery guy. And I do not think it's out of left field, no pun intended, to be able to go to a team and a team be bought into what he could be and him returning to form. Um, I, I know people say, hey, you're selling for pennies on the dollar. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think you can get a few good pieces for Tim Anderson, not MLB ready pieces, but a few good pieces.
Yeah. He's just dropped so far. As I'm looking at his 2023 stats,
Oh,
average
they're
wise,
bad.
yeah, he's gone from a 301 last year, and again, that was only in 80 games played, and that was his whole year. So he's played 67 games so far, and he's only hitting 223. So I don't know where the appeal is. Again, I think you're right. He could fill a, a hole for somebody somewhere.
Yeah.
I think he's got more trade appeal than Jimenez does. I'm telling you, Jimenez
Yeah.
will be and take him. Tim
Right.
Anderson, Tim Anderson will be like, oh, now we've bolstered the middle of the field kind of trade mindset, and you'll hear that we've bolstered the middle of the infield with Tim Anderson's athletic ability. Blah blah blah. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Well, with this team, and really again, this is more just a preview because it's something, folks, that we're going to be talking about over the next 2 to 3 weeks here as we get actually up to the deadline, and we'll get a better sense of moves that could be made. A lot of the rumors that we're hearing on the Cubs side are very quiet right now. On the Sox side, rumors are coming, hot and heavy given their situation, and John Heyman and Bob Nightingale of USA Today have said, hey, these moves could happen as early as this week. So we'll be talking about it. Things may happen very quickly, especially for the Sox. So we'll definitely talk about it more. I'll tell you what, to sum up the Sox situation, I'm going to be honest with you. In a very weird way, I'm excited about the moves that they're going to do because I've resigned to the fact that the rest of the season is worthless. I'm still going to go to games because I like going to the ballpark and I love watching baseball. I have no expectations at all. I know they're going to suck for 80% of these games. But at the end of the day, I'm excited for two things. I'm excited to see this team actually make some changes and let those changes here at the trade deadline be informed by the fact that they need to actually change what they're doing. And then I'm excited for the offseason where we're talking about maybe, not saying most likely, maybe people will actually be held accountable and not have their jobs. And I hate to make it about people losing their jobs, but when you have the likes of Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn have been in the organization for 2 lifetimes, it's time. It's time.
It is time. Now, I just to stay on the Tim Anderson conversation for a second, he apparently over the last 4 years has an average of 318.
Yeah.
So there is your bolstering of the middle of your infield. He doesn't
Absolutely.
he's not showing it this year, but he does have even okay, he has more potential than I'm giving him credit for.
Sure.
I'm not seeing it this year, and I'm done. Like again, I'm done with it.
Yeah.
But I think maybe you're right. I think maybe they can get more than we initially thought for him. And if that's what helps because if they're cleaning house, like you said, if they're cleaning house and they're not going to be any fun to watch, go get as much as you can for a minimum of your two pitchers in Giolito and who am I missing? Lynn and Anderson. Like I think the phones will be ringing more for the White Sox than they will for the Cubs.
Yeah. Yeah. And quite frankly, this is an opportunity for the White Sox. I mean, it's not a good position to be in. Certainly the front office, I know, doesn't want to be in this position. Fans don't want to be in this position. But
No.
having said that, now that you're in this position, this is another opportunity. You shouldn't need another opportunity, but it's another opportunity to get the damn thing right. And we'll see how that happens. But what I will say is this group as constructed is not on the same page. There's no family feel. That is important. Their clubhouse culture, clubhouse chemistry is not there. And I don't need 5 guys on my lineup being able to hit 35, 40 home runs. I want bat to ball. I want team players. I want leadership. I want solid, fundamental, fast, well played baseball. That's all I want. I could have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Dansby Swansons. That's all I care. That's all I want. I don't need a Vlad. I don't need a Juan Soto. I don't need 5 Luis Roberts. Like just let's win games any way we can win games. And let's be able to have players that will get in front of each other in a clubhouse and say, hey, get up, play the damn game, put 100% into it. And if you don't want to be here, then GTFO. And that does not happen on this team.
You're right. You're right. And it needs to.
It needs to. It needs to. We may talk about this another time, but I'm considering
Coming back.
No, I'm not considering coming back. No. I'm considering changing my season ticket package, honestly. Yeah, I have a full season. I do the full season. But with how things are going, I'm strongly considering it. So, because I want to it's a way to send a message of like, hey, I'm a fan and I will be by you and stick by you, but you also deserve some retribution for having your head in the sand, right? So if you're taking less of my money, it's a well, here's your punishment, but here's an olive branch. Try, do it. I'm here when you're ready to make an effort.
Yeah, I get it. I was a Cubs season ticket holder with either by myself or with friends 3 times in my life, and at some point you have to cut your losses.
Yeah.
And every time I was trying to latch on as a season ticket holder, they kept losing. Like, I can't.
Right.
I'll always support you, but I can't keep giving you money if you're not going to put the right product on the field.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, damn, I did not mean that to end so sad. But it's
No,
so
it's not sad. It's
depressing.
real. It's real. Like how much, right? We're in the middle of a season where ultimately, and again, you use the word and the idea of hope. Right now, I don't see, there's no hope right now for, is there hope on the north side? Maybe a little if the fire stays under Ross that people have been dying to see forever, and that translates to the rest of the team, because he's a different manager. He's a different manager right now than he has been for months. It's been the last 3 weeks. He's just lit himself on fire, which is fantastic. If that, we talked about Clubhouse Vibe and all that stuff, everybody follows along, keep going.
Yeah.
On the other side of town, there's that hope. There's not, you said, there's no cohesiveness in the locker room. Everybody's just there. So what do? We're not being depressing to end the show. You're being real. There's a difference.
Yeah. No, you're right. It is. it is.
Yeah,
real.
You can hear.
Yeah. No, it is real. But at the end of the day,
so
it's certainly a frustrating, and because we've had very long histories with both of these teams. We've been around long enough to see, whether we're Cubs or Sox fans, what these teams have gone through over the years. And like, Jesus, I don't need to win a World Series every year. I just want a baseball team on either side of town where I know every single year I'm probably going to be watching playoff baseball.
Yes,
that's all I care about.
Yes. For the love of God, yes. You're in one of the biggest markets in the world. And why the hell can't we compete? The Dodgers do it all the time. The Red Sox do it all the time. The Yankees do it all the time. Why are we not in that conversation? Why are we never? We should always be in the conversation. And we're talking about tearing it down and building it back up again.
And I'll leave you at this point because this really puts into perspective. In the city of Chicago, we have 2 baseball teams. One of them was one of the charter franchises of the National League, and the other was one of the charter franchises of the American League. And this is what we have to show for it.
Yep. It's awful.
All right. Well, on that note, no, thank you for joining us this week here at the Crosstown Baseball Show. Of course, feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can see our faces and see the video version of this show. And then, of course, we are live, or not live, but I recorded podcasts on anywhere you find your podcasts: Apple, Google, Spotify, you name it. And we'll catch you next week here on the Crosstown Baseball Show. But until then, go White Sox.
Go Cubs.
Take care.